Here we are at the very end of the 20th century. Argumentatively, it was the greatest century in humankind. Maybe the people in the future will disagree. But in any case, many of us, we are all very knowledgeable of this time. And it's a good moment to reflect on the departure of a time that we have all shared and all know. We have always talked about this is the 19s, 19 whatever, or whatever decade we're in and whatever year we're in. From this point on, it will always be the 20s for all of us. And this, as I say, was probably the greatest decade. But with it came some of the greatest discoveries. To think that 100 years ago, men did not fly. No one watched TV. No one listened to radios. Telephone, electric light was about the only high-tech thing a century ago. And now we have sound motion pictures and television and handheld communications and men going to the moon, as well as ordinary people going anywhere on the planet within a day, thanks to the advent of aviation that happened in this decade. But also in this decade, this century, has come some of the worst things in humankind. We have seen social movements such as communism, which ideally would be the ideals of man, but seen it so horribly perverted by man. We have seen racism elevated to the level of monstrous, murderous behavior by a government in Germany. And it's important for the next century to realize that with this technology, we must learn the dangers of our time, as well as the good. We end this century kind of like a whimper rather than a bang. But 30 years ago, 35 years ago, the chance that the entire planet would go up in a bang was very real. So it is good now that we end it this way, in this mild, happy time. But we have to understand exactly the dangers and the good of our time. By reflecting on all the times that have transpired in this century, maybe it will help the people, us, who have lived in this century, and will live out our lives in the remainder of the next century, and help the generation to come to understand the difficulties and challenges of this new century. So before we go into this new century, let us reflect on the century that is now departed.
How old were you when it was going on?
What was going on? All I remember, World War I, when I told you where I lived on Chapin Street by the Holy Trinity on Noble and off of Division, south of Division. I know a bunch of young soldiers were all lined up with civilian, and they're ready to be drafted into the World War I. And they were getting blessed by the bishop of the church. That I recall.
What else do you remember about the time before you went to school?
I'll never forget this as long as I live. They had Kaiser posters on them, and the kids in the alley, they put it on the post and they were throwing rocks at the Kaiser. And I was a kid, so I was born 1914, and the World War broke out. So I must have been about 4 or 5 years old too, just about. and I'll never forget that. As long as I live, a kid come up to me, he says, "Whose side you on, the Kaiser or the Americans?" And I said, "The Kaiser." And he was going to beat me up, and the guy said, "Wait a minute. What do you expect of a little kid to know the difference between a Kaiser and an American?" Never forget that. In the alley, they kept throwing stones against the Kaiser. They put the Kaiser's picture on the post, and they kept throwing. And a little bigger kid was going to beat me up because I said, "I'm a Kaiser."
Where did you live when you were little? And what did your house look like?
I tell you, John, in them days, people, they believe in hoarding money in a bank. They live, I'll never forget it. All they had was a bed, a table, chairs, and if they had excess, they were living on benches and orange crates, apple crates. That was and newspapers was Polish. They call it, and today they call it a Polish rugs. That's all the people believe in, scribbling there and putting newspapers. They didn't have any furniture to talk about. All people were interested in make money and put it in the bank. And that's what started the Big Depression. Everybody was putting money in the bank and nothing, buying nothing.
Did you go to Steffi as a young child?
Oh yes, I had a lot of them. And in them days, believe me, everybody had a big family. You can have baseball in that one block. You can have 4 teams. On the average, people used to have 7 to 15 kids. You wouldn't believe it, and that's it. There was nothing but girls and boys. In summer, I tell you, good thing they didn't have many cars. They had horses, and that street was always packed with kids playing baseball, and girls were playing what do you call jacks, and skipping the rope. That I remember. But the street was always crowded with girls and boys.
What would you say about your relationship with your parents?
Oh, I'd say pretty good. I can never complain. That's one thing. The old timers were very strict. The girls would be pulled in just when they'd be called. Even in summer, they'd call them in. As soon as it gets dark, between 7:30 and 8, the girls go in, and about 8:30 or 9, the boys had to go off the street. By 10 o'clock, you wouldn't see one boy out in the street or a girl. They'd all be home doing their homework or sleeping in the summer. Summer, then only winter they do their homework. Now, their parents were very strict.
What social group did you belong to, and what kind of kids did you associate with?
When you were a teenager.
Teenager, I associate with most of them were of Polish descent. There's a few Italians, a few Germans, most were Polish. And they were all sport-minded like I was. Swimming, baseball, handball, ice skating, roller skating, and so forth. And we kept it up till I graduated from Catholic school, and I got my brother Stanley's birth certificate, and that was my first job. I was only 14, and I went under his name 16. He's 2 years older. And my first job was not under my name, Walter. It was under Stanley. Otherwise, they wouldn't take me. You had to be 16 years old. That's how I got my first job, with his birth certificate.
Favorite sport, and were you in any teams?
I was in baseball quite a bit. We were known as, we used to play ball for money. We'd scrape up the money and we'd play in Lincoln Park. We'd play a game for 50 or 100, and we had to pay $5 for the umpires each. We put 5, the other team put 5, and then you had to pay $5 for the diamond. We always play on a Saturday or Sunday. You got to schedule it, and we were what was our name? Trying to think, gee, now I can't lost track of that name. But we used to always play for money. And I'll never forget the time we played a colored team. They had a beanball pitcher, and believe me, what a fastball he was. He was a 6'6". He was a bean. He was slim as a bean, and he had the fastest ball I ever saw. And I went up to bat the first time. I'll never forget it. That ball whizzed past me. I never even took my bat off my shoulder. I said, man, this guy got smoke on that ball. He struck me out. I struck out twice. And very seldom I didn't strike out, and he really had a ball. The third time I come up and bat, I says, I can't, I don't have that bat to swing in time. I said, I'm just stick it out like I'm gonna bunt it, and I got a single off him. We beat him, 1-0 with my single, and a guy hit me in with a triple. It was that was the fastest colored guy ever I faced. I could strike any man on it. Even everybody complained. He said, that guy really had something on the ball. He'd wind up, and the next thing you know, the ball would be in the catcher's mitt. You was surprised how fast he can throw that ball. And he was a good pitcher. Whoever he was, he'd be a good pitcher if they'd let the colors play. They didn't. But like I say, my stepfather was lacking work always. You know, during the Depression, he maybe worked 1 day a week, maybe he worked 2 days a month, and it was hard until he died in 1930. And then it was hard for my mother, and I figured, well, I'd help her out, and by going, you know, in a CC and giving that $25 for her and $5 we kept for ourselves. Stanley and I, we both joined, my oldest brother and I. That gives her $50 a month, and we kept 5 for ourselves. See, 25 was sent home, to direct home, and we kept 5 for ours when we were in the CC. We both went to Idaho, and that's when I was 22 years old in 1934, when Roosevelt was the president. I told you, John. I had jobs on and off. The only job I had in Grisby and Groner, I loved that job. But like anything else, they start cutting down because, you know what I mean, the warehouse was loaded with radios and nobody was buying them, and I got laid off. I got laid off when I was about, let's see, I think about 18 or 19. Then jobs were scarce. I tried in so many places. I maybe worked 2-3 weeks for $12, $15. I went to Goldblatt's. I worked for Goldblatt's too. $15 a week. People don't know how tough it was jobs. I remember the girls in the dime store, they didn't get no wages. They only got commission. Commission between what they sold. Now on the average, they made $1.75 to $2.10 or $2.25 a week. They had to work Thursday to 9 o'clock to 9:30, and Saturday to 9:30. And I worked on a truck, furniture truck, light delivery, and they had union drivers. They went and dropped me off at the warehouse Thursday and Saturday. Saturday didn't work. I had to go to the warehouse. I worked Saturday, all day Saturday to 9:30 for $15 a week.
Depression have on your life or your family?
The Depression had a big impact on our life. I can remember before my father got killed that the city of Chicago couldn't pay any of their help, their teachers, their policemen. So my dad would go once a week out to farmers and work in the farms, and then bring back maybe a sack of potatoes, a sack of green beans, some corn sometimes. And to this day, I hate beets, because my mother used to make red beets almost every which way, and the one thing that she did make from the potatoes he grew out was French fries, and I've never been able to make them as good as hers.